Sir.
Hi, Ashwarya.
How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good.
How does
my book has just been launched.
Yes.
It's now a week, and I believe it's already beginning to hit very large numbers on Amazon.
I can see it.
And excited about it.
Okay, and is that your reason for the podcast brand called you?
Well, the reason of the podcast is really to be able to share four decades of experience. And I've been one of the lucky few people who, after finishing an MBA when I was 21, got to work with 3 major companies, got an opportunity to build a fabulous brand, worked with thousands and thousands of young people in my career. And I thought this is a time for me to give back to a lot of people like you who are now in the early stages of your lives. And I'm there to help you, advise you, counsel you, coach you. And we're putting together a large number of people like me who will then be able to offer a lot of insights and a lot of wisdom.
And that is your inspiration behind the name brand called you.
Absolutely.
Okay, and it's recently been launched and it's doing really, really well. Do you have any, what is the premise of your book? Why brand called you? And what is the one thing you're aiming that maximum people can absorb out of this book?
So that's a very interesting question. Over the last 35, 40 years that I have been looking at brands, I was associated with building brands when I was in ITC. I built the Guardian brand in India. I often thought a lot on what exactly is my own identity. And when you think of it very clinically, most of us spend most of our lives working for brands of our employers without ever realizing that the biggest brand that we own ourselves is our own name. And in today's digitally connected world, it is very easy for our name to be spoiled because of wrong things that we do. And at the same time, conversely, everything good that we do is something that is adding on to our name.
And can reach multiple people at the same time.
And can reach multiple people. And of course, we all know, I've learned this only in the last few years on the power of social media.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I know that once you say something on social media, it can never be deleted.
It's on the internet.
It's available somewhere all the time.
Yeah.
So everything you say or do now has a record, and that is directly linked to your name. So much so that I've been reading about employers talking about showing them your social media records. But what was fascinating was when I read an article when the US government said that when you apply for a US visa, they have the right to ask you for all your social media accounts. Because they want to know what are your preferences. So you are right there in the limelight all the time.
All the time. And with the China social security also coming out. And so, isn't it a fearful thing that now you have to be so scared of, being judged and always at the center of everything and being criticized?
So I wouldn't use the word scared, Ashwarya. I would say it's important to be careful. Right? We all make mistakes. And my first boss told me that if you don't even make a mistake, you won't progress.
That's true.
But he also told me that just make sure you don't repeat a mistake.
Yeah.
So in today's world, what is important is for the social media to be used because that's the form of communication that everyone is using.
Yeah.
But to do it carefully, not to do things which are negative, and not to do things that will come back and bite you someday later on in life.
Yeah.
So don't be scared at all. It's the medium all of you are using.
Yeah.
But be careful.
Because it does extend a lot of power. It has a lot of repercussions if gone wrong. And so when we talk about your book and when we talk about, as you stated earlier, that it's all about cultivating your personal brand and nobody really looks back in hindsight and reflects on how you can build your personal brand. What would you say are very essential keys or tools that help you forward in terms of cultivating, whether it is reflection or whether it is, creating a plan for you and working on that framework, what would you say?
So, I think the whole process of building and cultivating your brand starts from the time you get your name.
Yeah.
Right? Your name is your identity, which I call your trademark. And you've patented your persona because that only belongs to you.
Yeah.
Because now there are other biological ways of doing it, from fingerprinting to gene mapping and DNA mapping and all that. But think of it in a different way. And I'm going to be a little philosophical when I say this because I'm much older than all of you, is that when you reach, my stage in life and you start thinking, what is it that you're going to leave behind in this world? The only thing you will leave behind is your legacy, which is your name. That's the only thing that will stay behind. That's the only thing that friends and family and the world will remember you by. So you need to be cautious from the time you start working on what you are saying, how you are saying it. Try not to get identified with any groups which are political or in any other form of negativity that could come into you. Build your characteristics. So if you're a foodie, talk about food. If you like writing, talk about writing. If you're an athlete, talk about athletics. Because everything that you are doing is getting logged on to your name.
Yeah.
So as you grow in life, your interests will change. You will, start a family. You will have children. And at each stage, your life will change. And as your life changes, you've got to keep investing more and more in yourself to make sure that the message you are giving to the rest of the world is consistent.
So when you talk about investment in yourself, is it more monetarily inclined or is it more, philosophically inclined? How do you quantify investment in yourself?
So let me give you a simple example. Most of us, when we look at someone else, we start by saying, oh, this person looks like this.
Yeah.
Or this person is tall. Or this person is an Android person, or this person is an iPhone person.
Physical appearance.
So, we quickly start to classify people.
Yeah, categorize them.
Or categorize them.
Yes.
Therefore, we are all putting people, friends, relatives, acquaintances in buckets.
Yeah.
Right? Therefore, it is important for us to be able to make sure that whatever we say and do is consistent. So that when other people put us in buckets, we don't have conflicts, we don't have contradictions about us in other people's minds. So if I'm seen as a person who's honest, it would be a disaster for my brand if you say I'm honest and someone else says I'm dishonest. Because the experience that other individual has had with me is completely reverse of what you have had with me.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. That's a sound advice. I went through your book and there are two things that you primarily talk about, which is either finding yourself a brand, which is, discovering it, exploring it, and then the other phase is sustaining it. How do you, through all the years that you live, how do you keep investing in it and making it grow multifold? So if I had to ask you a question, which is tougher of the two, which is tougher between finding yourself a brand and sustaining it, what would you say?
I would say the more difficult part is sustaining it.
Okay.
The old line that it is very easy to climb to the top of the mountain. It is very difficult to stay there.
Yeah.
Right? Sure, you heard that.
Yes.
So let's take the example of a very famous sports personality, Tiger Woods.
Yeah.
5 years ago, he was right on top. People were talking about him being the greatest golfer, and I still believe he's the greatest golfer. But then he messed up his personal life.
Yeah. And
the moment he got his life was messed up personally, that was the end of his golfing career.
Yeah.
He slid downhill within a few months. And in the last 5 years, he has struggled. Today, he's once again beginning to come back to his original levels.
Yeah.
Still nowhere near the top. But look at what one mistake made to a personality of his kind.
Yeah.
And if a person of his personality and his stature can be destroyed so easily, you can imagine how someone who are mere mortals like you and me can be, harmed.
Yeah. So then when you talk about, so clearly you say that staying there is tougher, and then, so what do you do to ensure that you stay there? What, if you had to give me, say, 3 steps that you ensure that, help you stay there, what would they be?
So, I'm going to tell you something which I'm sure you've heard from everyone older than you. These will sound like silly pieces of advice, but believe me,
they make sense.
They make sense. Number 1 is, whatever you do it ethically.
Okay.
Right? That's the best way to build a brand when a brand is honest. Right? Number 2, whatever you do, make sure that it is delivering value. Right? So whether you're buying a soap, for 50 rupees, and then you find that it is not good, or you find a soap for 45 rupees, which is outstanding.
Yeah.
If you find the value you're getting from the product is very good, you will keep buying it.
Yeah, and the price won't matter.
Price won't matter. And the same thing applies to you and me as brands. Because the experience other people have with you and me as human beings, in terms of what we are conveying to them, that is what
your value would be.
And the third one, I would say, is consistency.
Okay.
You as a brand must not be seen as an individual who is at one end of the scale today and at the other end of the scale tomorrow. Because then it's not trustworthy enough. Not trustworthy, and you don't know where you stand. Other people must know where they stand with you.
Yeah.
You can't be so unpredictable that nobody knows what's going to happen. And we've all worked with bosses who are unpredictable.
Yeah.
Today the guy is in a great mood, tomorrow is in such a foul mood, and then you wonder, how do you work for them?
How do you work for them? Yeah. And so I'm within the target audience that you plan on targeting with your book. And if you had to give me one advice on how do I start towards investing in my brand, or figuring it out and discovering it, what would your advice be? So
let's see what is your persona, right? You're talking to me, so therefore obviously you have interest in media.
Yeah.
Maybe you write well.
Yeah.
And if you've chosen this as a career that you want to be in, certainly for the next few years, that's where you start building your brand. So Ashwarya as a brand starts to get built when you say that I'm going to be in media, and I'm going to be the best there is in media.
And write.
And I will write.
Yeah.
And everything I say and do will be consistent with what my beliefs are.
Ethical, consistent, and valuable.
Correct. Well said.
Yeah.
So if that is your starting point, then that's where you start building your brand.
Okay.
And believe me, whether you look at a product brand or a personal brand, nothing can be built overnight.
Yeah.
Right? It can take you decades, 2 decades, 3 decades, look at musicians.
Yeah.
Right? Pandit Ravi Shankar spent all his life playing the sitar.
Yeah.
And he's a man who's revered today.
Yeah.
Even though he's no more. But that's because he built his brand into such a powerful brand in the world of music that he's remembered. Rafi, and whoever else.
Yeah.
And yet, if you come back closer to home, if you talk of Indian Idol, I was watching Indian Idol 10, and I was asking my wife, I said, I can't seem to remember any of the earlier Indian Idols. Where are they? Right? So again, it's a question of how have they
brand
promoted themselves?
Yeah.
So that's a good starting point for you.
Okay. And if people are struggling to find their brands, as a person who's really, really young and wanting to make it big in the world, most of us always come across this conflict of, whether you go behind something passionate, which may not be giving you as much monetary value as you hope, or a corporate job. So, when you build your brand, would you recommend always finding your passion and going behind it, running behind it and pursuing that, or, figuring out a middle way where you can still have your corporate life and still have your passions with you?
I would answer your question with my own experience. And I've written about it in one of my earlier books. When I started working, I was what you would call in India post-independence kids.
Okay.
Born in 1956.
Yeah.
Parents were middle class, and I never ever thought that I would join the corporate world and leave it and do something else. Right? I was still fortunate enough to go from one large company into a different aerospace into becoming an entrepreneur. But in today's world, all of you have the incredible opportunity for you to be in media and writing for the first 5 years, then say, hey, listen, I want to change my life and I want to be in the corporate world.
Okay.
And you go and work in the corporate world for 10 years.
Yeah.
And then after 10 years, you say, hey, I don't want to do this. I want to be in acting.
Yeah. Or be a YouTuber, because apparently that's a job too. Yeah.
Right? So today's world affords all of you the opportunity to do what you want.
Yeah.
But what is important, once again, coming back to what I said, is that when you are in your chosen line of business, be consistent.
Yeah.
Don't jump from one thing to the other every few weeks and say, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. Because then you're not giving yourself the opportunity to be able to build what you're setting out to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I was going through your book, and a lot of it is between building your brand and then being very, very careful of diminishing it. Yeah. So, what do you, even though you've touched base on that, what is diminishing your brand? How would you explain that?
So I'll give you a silly example from, say, the corporate world. We are all entitled to, say, take 15 days leave per year.
Yes.
And maybe we are entitled to 4 days, 5 days of sick leave. Very seldom have I found young people not taking their sick leave.
Okay.
At the end of the year.
Okay. Because it's given to them.
It's their entitlement.
Yes.
Now, whether you're sick or not, if you're giving a false medical certificate, that is the first stage when you are turning around and saying, I am willing to compromise my values because I need to take something that I'm entitled to.
Yeah.
I remember when I joined ITC, we used to get annual leave, but there was nothing called sick leave. There's nothing called, compassionate leave or urgent leave. The organization trusted you, and if you were sick, you were sick. You didn't send in an application to say I'm unwell.
Yeah.
Because the organization trusted you. Today's world, it would be fantastic if organizations can come back to the same level of trust.
Yeah.
And say, if I have 1,500 employees working in my company, I can trust them without giving them entitlements. Other than, of course, what is called the earned leave.
Earned leave, yeah.
So I think it's important for us to be able to build such value systems into first ourselves before demanding it from our employers. And once we start to demonstrate it ourselves, we will be that much more secure in whatever we want to do.
So we have spoken so much about all the measures that you can take on a personal level, which will have repercussions and, which will reach all aspects of your life. So I went through your book, and it says your personal brand should have nothing to do with narcissism. It is so difficult to be completely engaged and aware about working on yourself every single day, and then also rewarding yourself for the accomplishments that you have, and then not be narcissistic. How would you say is the best way forward to avoid that completely?
So Ashwarya, narcissist is a character who was overly proud of his own looks, of his body, of his physique, so much so that his narcissism got him into trouble. And therefore, when I use the word narcissist, I talk about it not from a positive sense, but from a negative sense. And what I say is that if you're building a brand, be modest about it. Don't show off about it. Yes, you will definitely get lots of adulation. But when you get all the adulation, and remember what I'm telling you is after 40 years of wisdom, so you don't necessarily have to take everything, because a lot of wisdom comes with hindsight.
Yeah.
But remember that narcissism has negative connotations. So by all means, be proud of your achievements, talk about your achievements, but don't show off about it.
And still know that there's a long way to go.
Correct.
Yeah.
We live in communities where there are negatives attached to views that are given to us by our neighbors.
Yeah.
Not every single human being is your well-wisher.
Yeah.
Right? You say something which is, you've had an amazing achievement about something, and someone behind your back will try and pull you down because, they are jealous of what you've done.
Yeah.
So go ahead and succeed. Go ahead and build your brand. Go ahead and talk about it. Go ahead and shout from the rooftop that you achieved this, because that is something you must do. But don't show off about it.
Okay.
And it's an old saying which said that if you don't blow your own trumpet, nobody will blow it for you.
Yeah.
And that's an old saying, but many, many years ago, an American colleague told me the corollary to this.
Okay.
So the first one is, don't blow your own trumpet. If you don't blow your own trumpet, nobody will hear you.
Yeah.
The corollary is that don't blow it so hard that hurts people's ears. So by all means, talk about your brand.
Yeah.
You built it and you deserve to talk about it.
And with that note of don't blow your own trumpet so hard that it hurts people's ears, come back next week and I will thank you, Mr. Ashutosh Garg, for this. Do you want to give the audience a vision of what the podcast is going to look like every week?
Thank you, Ashwarya. That was really fantastic speaking to you. I think it's a great way to kick off our first podcast, and I'm really looking forward to working with you on not just one or two interviews, but we're going to talk about your personal brand. We're going to talk about your personal journey. We're going to talk about startups. We're going to talk about entrepreneurship. We're going to talk of challenges that people face. And maybe in about a few months, we will start to bring a guest every week. You and I can do interviews.
Yes.
And we'll bring some fairly iconic names in our country who will come and share their experience of what is happening in their life, what has been their experience with their startup journey. And remember that it's important for all of us to know that while we build a startup, we must also know how to fund it. We must know how to run it. And finally, we must know how to exit from it. Because there's no point in working so hard if you are not in a position to be able to cash out from all the hard work that you've done.
Yeah.
So thank you again.
Thank you. And we will see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You podcast. Be sure to visit tbcy.in to join the conversation, access show notes, and discover fantastic bonus content. You can follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Simply search for the Brand Called You. Thank you and see you next week.